let's talk a little bit about what got you into combat sports.
Okay, so I think chance, destiny. I don't think it was. I mean, maybe you could look back and say there were some telltale signs that I would be a good fit for it, but I don't think anybody would have predicted that I would have been in combat sports, and I wouldn't have predicted it for myself. But I started wrestling at 15 years old when I was a freshman in high school, and I honestly did that because the only other the only women's sport that was offered was basketball in the winter season. And I just have never been good at basketball. I'm white. I don't jump high. I can't dribble a ball. I don't aim well. So it just wasn't the sport for me. And I really wanted to play a sport. I mean, I had been into sports, since I was in grade school. And I thought, the only other one is wrestling. And my best friend at the time, Sharon, she's like, why don't we go out for wrestling? She's tiny little Asian, and so basketball wasn't her sport either. And we're like, she's like, why don't we go out for wrestling? And I'm like, that really never crossed my mind. But I'll go home and see, what my mom thinks. I knew better than to ask my dad at the time.
Right.
Mom said, she was kind of unsure, but she's like, I'm not going to keep you from doing it, but I don't think you're going to like it. And let's definitely not tell your dad. Yet. It's my dad sitting over there.
That's a good idea.
Now he knows the whole truth.
Right.
I did it for about 2 weeks, and I told my mom I love it, and I don't want to stop. And then she's like, oh boy, okay, I thought you weren't gonna. This wasn't gonna stick. This was something, throw it at the wall and see what sticks. I didn't think this was gonna stick, but it stuck. And so eventually we had to break the news to my dad, and I think he was less than thrilled. Probably less than thrilled.
Yeah.
But I did. I wrestled for all 4 years, and to this day was one of my greatest accomplishments. I think just making it through those high school seasons, being one of only 2 females on the team, and my junior year I was the only female, and that was the year that I think really pushed me to get a lot better because I was forced to just wrestle with the guys. And it was definitely character building. I think a lot of that is what developed the toughness to translate into being a fighter and into mixed martial arts. So when I was 19 years old, I went to Central Washington University, stumbled across a mixed martial arts program there. Again, another girlfriend of mine was like, hey, you got to come check this MMA club sport program. I'm like, what is that? But, I really wasn't familiar with the sport. And she started to explain it to me, and I'm like, that doesn't sound interesting. Like, I really have no interest in getting hit in the face. And I'm not, I wouldn't consider myself an aggressive person. Maybe other people would. But, I was sports driven. I was competitive, but not aggressive. And I just went to kind of appease her because she kept bothering me about it. She was a karate girl. And then lo and behold, I was like, right again, this is right up my alley. I started learning jiu-jitsu. That's what really intrigued me, was that fact that I had already wrestled. I was really comfortable on the ground, but adding submissions to it, arm locks, choke holds, guillotines, all that stuff. I'm like, this is like another element to wrestling. How cool. I was like, I have no interest in fighting, though. Absolutely no interest. I don't want to get hit in the face. It just sounds like a terrible idea. But then I went to my first live event. I went to watch amateur fights. And I just remember feeling so alive in that moment and very exhilarated. And again, the stars aligned. It's one of those things you just step outside your comfort zone. That's something I think I've been historically known for doing. And at the end of that fight card, the referee got on the microphone and he said, in 3 weeks, I'm having an all-female fight card. And you think about it, it's so funny now because he had to announce it to the audience because he was struggling to find females to sign up to fight because it just wasn't, we were talking, when was this, 2005? Yeah, 2005, maybe beginning of 2006. I think 2006 is when I had my first fight, so it was like right around that time. I just made my way down there and I signed up. And then 3 weeks later, I had my first fight. So again, it's just a lot of opportunities that maybe some people would go, oh, no, that's not right for me, or that doesn't, oh, that's too soon, and that's too, all the excuses come to why not to take those crazy leaps of faith. But I've always been like, if you have an inkling or you have a desire, or you want to do it, then I think that you should just go for it. And I've been a jump in head first, smurged all the way kind of personality. Totally. And so there I was. 3 weeks later, I was fighting, and it's kind of history from there.
It's a pretty big delta between wrestling and MMA. What was that transition like, moving from, a solid 4 years of being one of only 2 female wrestlers in that space to moving into an MMA world where women really weren't even really that popular in that sport at that time?
Yeah, not popular, not taken serious, considered a spectacle at best. And, you had to put up with the derogatory comments from the audience and everyone just being so ignorant to what it meant to be a female fighter, which is really no different than being a male fighter. But, you had to battle those stereotypes and break through a lot of glass ceilings as well, I feel like, being a female, not just inside the competition, but also inside the gym. Sometimes that's your biggest battle there, is just getting past that stereotype of the people who have to, support you on a daily basis. But then I think once you get there, it's all right. As far as the question, the transition between going from wrestling to being a mixed martial artist, well, I had 3 weeks to make that transition, realistically, which was not enough time. And it was pretty much a terrible idea, but it was also, I wouldn't change it because I think it certainly woke me up to exactly what it means to be in a fist fight and how, you have to train for that. You can't just step in. And even though I had the wrestling background, I was facing a very good Muay Thai fighter, so a striking art. And I just didn't know how to fight. I never fought before. Like I said, I was an aggressive person. I was pretty nice outside of the wrestling mat. So I took her down the first couple rounds and, I almost forgot that you could even punch on the ground kind of thing. I'm just wrestling her. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then I remember was it the second or the third round? I think it was the third round, if I remember correctly. No, I remember it was the second round. That doesn't really matter. Anyways, she got me in a Muay Thai clinch, which is essentially where they lock their hands behind your head and they kind of press the elbows for those of you that don't know, into the collarbone, and they kind of just lock your head in place and you can't really move anywhere. And if you don't know how to defend it, you get kind of stuck in that, right? Your head stuck, your rest of your body stuck too. And she just starts teeing off, kneeing me in the face. So this is when it was allowed in amateurs. I believe in Washington State that is not allowed anymore. But there's no rules and no regulations back then. We were on a reservation at a casino. There wasn't even medics there really. Jeez. So it was pretty shoddy. And she catches me flush on with one of them and just explodes my nose. She breaks the nose. And I'm still trying to figure out how to get out of this thing. I know my nose is broken, but I'm still there, and I definitely don't want to take any more knees. So I think I just rallied myself out, and I shot and I took her down, and she got on my back somehow in the crazy transition, and she's trying to sink in the choke, and it was the most surreal moment still. When I think about it, I'm like, that was such a pivotal moment for me, because I'm on my hands and my knees, and I remember this steady stream of blood coming out of my nose, and this pool of blood, I'm just watching it getting bigger and bigger in front of me, and I'm still in the middle of this defending against the chokes, and she was not able to get the choke in, so she sits up and still has her hooks in on my back, and she starts punching me. And I just remember thinking, I got mad. I think I lost my temper in that fight. Might be the only time in a fight that I've lost my temper, but I got pissed. And I thought, there's no way she should be on my back. If anything, if we're on the ground, I'm in charge, period. She's the striker, I'm the wrestler. So I started bucking her. I worked her down into that guard position. Then I stood up above her, and I remember just raining down punches. And that was how the second round ended. And there was just, it was there was a lot of blood all over her, blood all over me. And I was just, pouring. And I went back to my corner, and my corner decided to stop it. They didn't want me to go back out for the third round. Yeah, so I finally felt like I figured out what I was there to do, and I was pretty pumped at that point, and I didn't quit, at the time when I could have if the nose had been the big deterrent that they thought it was. But I'm not bitter about that at all. I think it was probably the best call. They had my best interest in mind. Again, like I said, there's no ambulance there. I wasn't getting paid. I was making money. Right. It was in my best interest and safety. But I'll tell you what, I had to go home, and I think my dad's parents were visiting, and I had 2 giant black eyes. I looked like a raccoon and a lion had a baby because my nose had no definition. It was just wide and flat like a lion nose. And there was no hiding it. I mean, no amount of makeup, no amount of anything was going to hide that busted nose. So I had to kind of face the scrutiny of my grandfather, who was clearly not on that wavelength that, his granddaughter should be fighting. I think my dad had to kind of hang his head in shame. My mom was kind of like, what am I doing supporting my daughter in this? And
At some point, I've got to imagine they're thinking, we just let our daughter go into the ring and get the crap beat out of her. And just looking at the repercussions of it, that had to have been challenging. Like, that's an interesting Christmas dinner conversation, right?
It certainly was. It certainly was. And so we had an interesting couple weeks while I was healing up. But everyone, I think, kind of thought I had got it out of my system now, that was horrific, but thank God that she kind of figured out this isn't for her or for girls or for whatever. But I knew I wanted to come back and I wanted to do it better. I knew I needed more training. I knew it wasn't that I wasn't capable. I knew, and people were like, "Oh man, you're so tough. You kept fighting through that round." I think they just, the perception of women at that time just wasn't that, that they're tough and can handle that kind of stuff, is they're fragile and that they need to be saved. And so I think the fact that I fought through it, and it wasn't until my coaches made the decision between the rounds, so I had it in my mind the whole time. I was like, I need to come back and I need to win and I need to prove that I'm better than that, because I can't just walk away from it, with that kind of a loss the one time. I've got to come back. So I kind of kept that to myself, because I know everybody would have told me I was crazy. I would have had a lot of lectures. So I just kind of kept that silently to myself. But I did. I came back and I won my next 6 fights in a row.
Dang. Nice.
Yeah.
So what was the moment where you knew that MMA was something? When did you know that you could compete with the best in the world?
That moment came when I had my first fight with Strikeforce. And I think it was on HD Net at the time. So it was kind of cool that it was actually on television. And I fought a hometown girl that was supposed to just annihilate me. She was a 2-time K1 kickboxing world champion. I was fighting her up a weight class in San Jose in her home, and I won. It was a 3-round battle, but I took her down and I beat her up and I almost armbarred her, and I won, and I got paid, and Strikeforce offered me a contract.
Whoa.
A multi-fight deal, right? So not just one fight, but I think I made like $1,500 that fight. I think it was something like $1,000 to show and $500 to win, which was big money at the time for a female in this sport. And it was only my 3rd professional fight, and they offered me, a multi-fight contract. And I thought, wow, I could actually potentially make a living at this. I think I was getting paid around like $2,000 a show, $2,000 to win after that.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? I could do that. I could sacrifice enough, and I could focus on just making that money work for what the basic necessities, and I could just focus on training and see where this takes me, because I'm in love with it.
At the time, was that common for just like to have a 1-fight contract for women or men in Strikeforce, or like was it a big deal to get a multi-fight contract?
It was a big deal to get a multi-fight contract, especially as a female. I can't speak as much to the men at that time. I think primarily it was multi-fight contracts, but the reason I only had one is because I was definitely brought in to lose. Elena had a multi-fight contract, the girl that I fought, but not me, because I was supposed to lose. It was like, she'll just come in, she'll build up this girl, and then she'll be out on her merry way. But when I won, they were like, oh, maybe we should take this girl more seriously.
Ooh.
We can offer her multi-fights. So I got that multiple fight contract, and actually, what's pretty cool is like I was the longest signed female to Strikeforce from that moment, because it happened. That was in 2008, and until the absorption of Strikeforce in 2000, like almost 2013.
Right.
And so I was signed that entire time.
Whoa.
And it's pretty cool, because it was really at the pinnacle of like women's MMA, like starting to make that transition onto TV. And Strikeforce was I think the first mainstream organization to take women's fighting seriously. I mean, they put on that fight with Gina Carano and Chris Cyborg, which was the first ever to headline over the men, on a televised event. So that was pretty cool. Scott Coker, now the Bellator president, he's done pretty good things for women's MMA, I would say.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So let's fast forward to you submitting Holly Holm. Amazing fight. Dana puts the belt on you. When did it really hit you that you were a world champion?
It was a couple days later. I don't think I slept for like 2 days. I just had this natural high on life. That was the best feeling ever. And I wasn't tired whatsoever. I was just in that mode. I just want to do everything. I've conquered the mountain, and just kind of soak it all in. But definitely took a couple days. I think once things start to slow down, once people that were there, your family, they go home and you're sitting back at home and reality sets in that you're like, whoa, wait a minute. This belt's coming with me. It's real. It's not a dream. I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and still have, yet to have this fight. Because that happens a lot in fight camp where you dream. I mean, you literally think about it so much that even if you're awake and you're doing visualization or you're at night sleeping and you're dreaming about winning that fight, you've seen it 100,000 times in your mind how it's going to be. So when it actually kind of comes, it's like, well, I've been here already so many times. It takes a little time before it's like, this is not just something that I've created in my head, like to believe, but this is reality.
That's incredible. What a feeling to have that set in. That's an amazing thing. So Dana White credits the fight that you and Ronda Rousey had with really, bringing women's MMA to the UFC. I'm curious your thoughts on what it was like helping pioneer women MMA into the mainstream.
Well, that's pretty cool because I'll tell you what, I remember a long time where Dana White was saying women will never be in the UFC.
Right.
That question was posed to him, I don't know how many times, but...
Oh, that was huge, too. That was a huge controversy.
Yes. When are women going to be in the UFC? Never.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a very clear cut and dry. It was never going to happen, and I think he honestly believed that. And I'll tell you what, I remember watching him do an interview where people asked why. Like, why wouldn't you give that opportunity to women? He said, because I saw a women's fight once and it was horribly mismatched. There's just not enough depth. There's not enough skill set. There's not enough women out there who could make this, a good division, where they could challenge each other and be on a high level together, right? So he saw something that put a bad taste in his mouth. And I remember thinking at that time, you haven't seen me fight yet, though. And how weird is it? I mean, I think it was a couple years later that it was the fight with Ronda Rousey that made the whole thing happen. Very surreal now, looking back on it. But I had that in my mind. I just knew in my mind. It was like, if you see me fight, though, you'll change your mind. And, I don't think at the time I really believed that would be it, but it was a motivating factor for me to, get to that level, to get on the big events in Strikeforce, to kind of model myself after Gina too, just trying to get to that main event slot or put on that performance of the life that could change people's minds about what women were capable of. And it took two, it took a high level Ronda and a high level me, I think, and to have everything, right? I mean, we really had the whole package. And so I would say I'm super grateful to have a rival like Ronda because I think we had everything that it takes to make people interested in it. We had the natural rivalry. We had a good skill set. We had the tenacity. We had the toughness. We had the heart. We had the desire. And her and I were just fireworks together. So it's pretty cool now. You don't know what you're doing at the time. You don't know the impact that it's going to make or, how it could change the future of something. I've just always been a very passionate person to lead with my heart first. And that's what I was doing in that moment. And it's so crazy now because I remember, I think I've done interviews saying too, well, Dana hasn't seen me fight yet. He's going to, I'm sure I could probably go back and dig that out somewhere. But I know I for sure at least thought it. And that's just wild to me that it was that moment that did change the perception of what women's MMA was valued at.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this week's episode. We hope you really enjoyed it. If you love the people and stories of the Puget Sound, please support this podcast by reviewing us and rating us on Apple Podcasts. Stay tuned next week as we continue to curate the underground.